Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, taking another deep dive into this Nebraska program and kind of doing an updated transfer portal target wish list for Nebraska as we continue to get information on what players, what position groups Nebraska wants to go after in the transfer portal. About a week ago, we talked about some positions Nebraska should be going after. We talked about the quarterback market and potentially adding a veteran quarterback. Now I want to focus on the wide receiver position, talk about a few key targets for Nebraska as they enter in the Dylan Rhule, Danny Kalen era. And we kind of talked about it. One of the major goals for Nebraska as they enter this transfer portal cycle is to make sure that Dylan Rhule and Daniel Kalen have the weapons and the tools they need to be successful in this offense. The future is bright for this Nebraska offense, but you want to make sure these quarterbacks have talent to work around, right? I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of programs make is they land that quarterback, but they don't give the tools to the quarterback to be successful. And you look at this Nebraska wide receiver room, and it's talented, but it's extremely young. And if you're Nebraska, Matt Rhule, Coach Satterfield, looking at this offense, you don't necessarily want to be going into the 2024 year with potentially a true freshman quarterback starting and kind of throwing to really young wide receivers. You want to add some experience at this pass catcher position to kind of help the development of a guy like Daniel Kalen and Dylan Rhule. We're going to be talking about a few prospects that I think could help this. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. There has been just an overwhelming amount of support from the Nebraska fans. You guys know this is a program I love talking about. Cannot thank you guys enough for rocking with the boys, showing all the love. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section, position groups, players that you would like to see Nebraska target in the transfer portal. And without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start with a name that has emerged as a top target for Nebraska in the transfer portal. He's expected to be on campus early January, and that's former Wake Forest wide receiver Jamal Banks. Now, as a Wake Forest fan myself, I'm very familiar with Jamal Banks and his game, and he's kind of the guy that checks the boxes of what we just talked about for Nebraska and their goals in the transfer portal. This is a guy that's played a ton of football the last couple of years at Wake. You look back at his last two seasons, over 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns the last 2 years at Wake, and you look at some of the other numbers that really jump out. 35 first downs in 2023. When you're evaluating wide receivers and what playmakers, what pass catchers you want to bring in, you want to get those wide receivers that are good on third down and good in the red zone. How do you win football games at the college level? You got to be good in the red zone. You got to be good on third downs. Jamal Banks was the go-to wide receiver for Wake Forest on third downs. He's a big body that can kind of make those contested catches, but also a really smooth mover that can create separation, work that deeper half, but also kind of work that intermediate route tree in those third and kind of medium situations. And you look at Nebraska, what do you really want to have as a pass catcher in this offense? A guy that can do just that, a possession receiver that has the frame, that has the route running ability, and obviously the experience. In 2023, he had 0 drops. When he was targeted, a 65% completion percentage, kind of checking all those boxes that you want in terms of what kind of wide receiver do we want to help a guy like Dylan Rhule or Daniel Kalen develop as a quarterback. Jamal Banks would be a massive addition. Again, great in the red zone, great on third down. Those are the receivers that you want in this Nebraska offense. And probably most importantly, and I want to hammer this spot home, is he's a veteran guy that's played a lot of football at the college level, because I'm not necessarily looking at this Nebraska wide receiver room and saying it stinks. I'm just saying it's young. You have guys like Lloyd, Dawson, Coleman who are going to be great wide receivers, but you want to supplement all that young talent with some veteran experience. And a guy like Jamal Banks, first-team All-ACC guy in 2022, would do kind of just that. Now, the next target I want to talk about, and this is kind of, we've had this conversation a lot, how to replace Billy Kemp in this offense, a guy that's going to create separation in those short kind of route trees, be really good after the catch. A guy like Tyron Smith, I think, could come in and play that role Billy Kemp played. And you look at Billy Kemp in 2023, I think he could have had a much better season had Nebraska's offense just been a little bit more two-dimensional. But you want to replace a guy that's caught a lot of footballs during his career, can really make stuff work after the catch. You look at a guy like Tyron Smith, 123 catches during 3 years at UTEP, over 1,800 yards, 12 touchdowns, a guy that is extremely good after the catch, a guy that is extremely good creating separation quickly in his route trees. In a similar conversation we had with Jamal Banks, going back to that 2022 year, he dealt with injuries in 2023, 45 first down catches for Tyron Smith. So you're getting a guy like Jamal Banks potentially and Tyron Smith who have excelled on third downs. They've been the go-to wide receivers in their former offenses as, hey, when we need a play, it's third and medium, and we need someone to get open and make a play and extend this drive. Jamal Banks, Tyron Smith have been both guys that have been able to do that, and both veteran receivers that have played a lot of football. These two names would make a ton of sense for Nebraska to go after in the transfer portal. Obviously, Matt Rhule really recruiting the state of Texas well. Tyron Smith would be a very good option for Nebraska. This was a guy that 12 months ago committed to Texas A&M out of the transfer portal, decided to stay at UTEP for another year. This is a guy that's on a lot of Power 5 programs rosters. I think would be a great fit for Nebraska. The next target I want to talk about now, this is pivoting. We've already talked about Dante Dowdell a little bit, but he's a guy that also is expected to be on campus early January for Nebraska. And to a similar conversation that we had with wide receivers and giving your young quarterbacks some pass catchers to work with that are veteran and experienced and have played a lot of college football, you also want to give this young quarterback room a strong run game. And we always say this, what is a quarterback's best friend? It's a run game to work off of. When you have that play action, when you're able to kind of stay on schedule with that run game, and you look at the running back room for Nebraska, obviously Grant gone. You have Ramir Johnson and Gabe Ervin who are coming back from injuries, and you're kind of looking at that room and saying, how deep, how healthy is it? Emmett Johnson, a guy that I think can be a phenomenal running back for Nebraska, but you're probably looking to add another running back to this room, specifically kind of the type of running back Dante Dowdell is, a guy that's 6'2", 215 pounds. He's been extremely good at the high school level, ran for over 5,000 yards in the state of Mississippi. During his true freshman year at Oregon, had 17 carries for 90 yards. That was just a tough running back room to crack. You're looking at the type of running back you want for Nebraska, a physical kind of frame that is able to impose his will on opposing defenses. And Dante Dowdell kind of checks that box, and I think would add a ton of talent and a ton of depth to this Nebraska running back room that you saw last year. Just didn't have that depth. When you lost your confidence in Anthony Grant and a guy like Gabe Ervin and Ramir Johnson went down, you were kind of forced to ride with Emmett Johnson, who I think played really well at times, but probably was getting more carries than he should have been for being a redshirt freshman for this Nebraska program. I think you add a guy like Dante Dowdell, you feel really a lot better about the running back room and the depth and talent that you have for these young quarterbacks to work with. And the last guy I want to talk about, another Nebraska offer here. And this one kind of stood out to me. I had to go do some research on a guy in Xavier Alexander. Now, out of high school, was committed to Arizona State, decommits, goes to Idaho, plays a ton as a true freshman, is a first-team FCS All-American, a guy that registered over 75 tackles, an extremely low missed tackle rate. You look at the off-ball linebackers, you have to replace two stalwarts for that Nebraska defense at the linebacker position, and you like some of the guys that you have. This would be an addition that is not necessarily a massive role in 2024, but this is a guy that has 3 more years of eligibility at the college level and a redshirt year. So you're Matt Rhule, you want to use the transfer portal, yes, to get veteran talent, but you can also use the transfer portal to add young depth to this offense, or defense, I should say, that is going to be around and help this roster not only in 2024, but in 2025 and in 2026. Matt Rhule has been very adamant at the idea that we want to get guys that can get developed. And Xavier Alexander, again, 3 years of eligibility plus a redshirt year, has that opportunity to come into this program and get developed over the next couple of years. These are kind of the updated list for Nebraska. And again, we're going to continue to update you guys, but I want to focus more on that wide receiver position. I want this Nebraska team heading into 2024 to have some more experience and some guys that are proven at the Power 5 level to, again, supplement the young, talented wide receivers that you had in the 2023 class, guys like Coleman, Dawson, Lloyd, but also what you're bringing in the 2024 class. In the transfer portal, Nebraska is not going to be a team that gets 25 plus players in the transfer portal. That's just not how Matt Rhule wants to run this program. But you can use the transfer portal to supplement inexperience but talent with kind of guys that are experienced and proven at the college football level. And in that wide receiver room, I think that's where you're focused on it the most. You want to get guys that are experienced, that a young quarterback can rely on and learn from. Jamal Banks, Tyron Smith, I think would be phenomenal additions for Nebraska. Again, we're going to continue to update you guys as Nebraska continues to make moves in the transfer portal. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.